Folks, we've got a quorum and it's 9, so I think we better go ahead.
Yep.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I know. There will be... Yeah, I goofed once already this morning. We need to schedule a Board of Equalization meeting for sometime. Okay. Board of
Is that going to go under discussion items? Action item? Okay.
Yeah, this is, we need to make that addition to the agenda, that we need to schedule that Board of Equalization meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay? All those in favor of the agenda with the addition, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, minutes of the previous meeting. Let's see, that was January 23rd, wasn't it? Okay. Motion for approval?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board on a public comment at this point? Okay. The man in back, you had your hand up first. Yeah, here we go. I couldn't see you back there, Mike.
I've got handouts today. Excited about that.
I'm going to have to take the chair's prerogative here a little bit. We have a fairly lengthy agenda this morning, and we have people that have to be at a meeting at noon. So I am unfortunately going to have to restrict the public comment things to 5 minutes this morning. Usually we don't do that, understand that, but we've got a problem this morning, so I'm going to have to do that. I've already asked a couple of the presenters to make their presentations as brief as they can, so sorry, but I'll have to do that. Thank you. Okay.
Michael Fields, Winnebago Valley. I'll be talking about a 4-minute segment of the October 17th board meeting that starts at timestamp 1 hour, 5 minutes in. That meeting dealt with an environmental assessment worksheet in preparation for Skyline's expansion project along County 5. Findings of fact were read to be sure the project met certain standards. The board was told the cumulative potential of environmental effects has been considered, and the project does not contain the potential of significant environmental effects. What are those? Effects on the environment that result from the incremental effects of a project in addition to other projects in the environmentally relevant area that might reasonably be expected to affect the same resources, including future projects actually planned or for which a basis of expectation has been laid. You were then told, so we don't have a plan on the table for any other project in that area right now. We do have a site that operated as a quarry at some point in the past to the north of the proposed site. That would be the Schutz Quarry. I think this is wording from the findings, it's hard to tell, but it asked, is a project reasonably likely to occur on that site, Schutz? And if so, whether sufficiently detailed information is available about the project to contribute to an understanding of potential cumulative effects. The board was then told that the expectation of future excavation on that site would be minimal based on its history, and if the Schutz Quarry was deemed to be a legal non-conforming use. However, You were also told that it would be more likely that the Schutz Quarry operator would have to get a cup before being allowed to operate legally. But that would mean that the scale of excavation on this 28.5 acres of bluff land would not be insignificant. You were further told about a letter requesting historical information about that quarry from the landowner that was never answered, despite a deadline. Therefore, there was no way to know about cumulative effects since sufficiently detailed information was not available. So here's the problem. Unanswered letter from the landowner aside. The Environmental Services Office has had a hand-delivered reclamation plan proposal for the Schutz Quarry since November of 2015, more than 2 years ago. The handout you have is the guts of that reclamation plan with a cover memo acknowledging a secondary receipt in March of last year. As you can see, if you flip through, all you have to do is look at the highlighted comments. There's only 3 of them. As you can see, the plan is sufficiently detailed to understand the intent to excavate every square inch of that parcel. The plan uses phrases such as, mining will occur for an indefinite period of time until all reserves are extracted. Continued extraction will occur in a series of slices from the existing vertical face until the quarry back wall is reached. And as for reclamation, it is impossible to return this mine to its pre-existing landform and use. I'd say that's pretty sufficiently detailed right there. Gives you a pretty good idea of what's planned for that quarry. Would the board have been so quick to dismiss the cumulative effect provision had it known that about 60 acres of bluff land in Winnebago Valley could be actively excavated if these 2 plans go through? Things will really get hectic down there if they're both operating at the same time. If the Environmental Quality Board knew about the 60-acre mining proposal, would Houston County still have been the RGU for Skyline's environmental
Excuse me,
assessment worksheet?
Mike, I can just allow you another minute. I'm sorry.
It's about all I need. Maybe not. Your vote was based on the findings of fact, but if those facts were misleading or incomplete, how valid was the vote? The board was told that if the operator of the Schutz Quarry came in for a cup, quote, we would permit that, and then we would look at this in a reverse way, saying, perhaps we have a permitted site to the south of you, that would be Skyline, so now it's appropriate to determine that there is a reasonably likely potential for cumulative effects. This raises several troubling questions. In the county's view, both Schutz and Skyline enjoy the same legal status, which is no status. It's limbo. So why has the Schutz Quarry been seemingly put on ice for 2 years while its legal status is being determined? Did Skyline just get some kind of pass on the cumulative effects provision? Is the county picking winners and losers?
Mike, excuse me. Look,
Fred, I didn't know about the time limit until I walked in. Now I have 2 more paragraphs to read.
I'm sorry, Mike. If you want to continue, you can continue at the end of the meeting, and that'll be fine. We have 2 board members.
May I finish my thought, please?
Mike,
Anyone else want to just shut me up right now? Am I getting on some touchy subject matter here?
What Fred said, though, Mike, okay?
Right, but he said that as I walked in, after I had already written this.
And he said at the end of the meeting, you may continue. At least that's what I heard sitting
I
there.
That's
have
right.
errands to run. I have a dog in my car.
Mike, I'm sorry, Mike. There's nothing else I can do at this point.
Yeah, I can tell you're very, very sorry.
Mike, that did it.
Yeah, that did it.
I recognize the amount of time you spent preparing this, Mike, and I'm sorry, but there's nothing else I can do. I have to limit people this morning. Is there anyone else with public comment? Yes, sir.
Good morning. I am Michael Kruko from Bonanza Grain Kruko Rock Products. As part of the board packet, there is an agenda request form by Aaron Locker with a vague issue description of update board on Schutz Quarry. I don't know what Mr. Locker intends to present to the board as an update, but I have spoken with legal counsel and to the extent it involves information on whether the Schutz Quarry is a legal non-conforming use, including whether the use of the property as a quarry has been discontinued, that is improper. The status of the Schutz Quarry will likely come before this board in its quasi-judicial role. Allowing Mr. Locker to make a presentation now is another improper attempt to influence this board before the matter is officially before it, and it is unfairly prejudicial. We want our objection made for the record. Thank you.
The zoning administrator and the county attorney have worked together on this, and Mr. Locker has asked for time on the agenda this morning. So we have to allow that time. Any further public comment this morning?
Morning, Commissioners. Two really quick comments. Please, Ken Jumper from La Crescent Township. I just want to remind the board that Houston County Protectors has been working on the Schutz mine since August 17th, so there's nothing premature about having the county zoning administrator come in here and talk about it. And my second comment is, it's kind of depressing reading the Caledonia Argus to see this dispute you're having with the county auditor. I want to tell you, I think most people in the county do not agree with you. The county auditor has done a great job for decades, and I would urge you to come to a speedy resolution that's amiable to both sides on that issue. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. One more public comment? Okay. Will there be more after that? I shouldn't have said just one more. Okay, go
I was
ahead.
just wondering if I could make some comments after Aaron has his presentation. Just comments.
Gary, you can make a public comment. There is a public comment segment, as you see, at the end of the meeting.
Okay, I guess.
And that would, beginning and end, and that's it for public.
I was just hoping to talk after, but I guess what I want to let the board know is.
I'm sorry, who are you?
I'm Gary Miners.
I'm sorry.
The owner of the Schutz Quarry down there.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess the point I want to make is, I don't know if you folks are all aware that when I leased that quarry to Krukows, the zoning board, or not the board, the office, give me a letter stating we were good to go. Now they're closing it. I made a business decision based on what the county give me, and I don't know what the repercussions are, but I do want you to be aware that I want it on record that I do have a letter stating we were good to go. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Now I'll ask again, any other public comment this morning? At least beginning of the meeting? Okay. Mr. Locker.
Thank you, Commissioners. Before I start, I'll just respond to Mr. Kruko's comment that I don't believe this board will be put in a place where it makes a decision on the Schutz Quarry. Right now, the decision rests with my office, and if that decision's appealed, it's not appealed to the county board, it's appealed to the Board of Adjustment. So you should not foresee yourselves having to make a decision on using the information that I present to you today.
If I may, that's not, the Erickson pit came.
Sir, you've had your public comment, sir. I'm sorry. On matters where it gets a little dicey, I do have to run it by the book, and that's the book, public comment at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. And that's it. I'm sorry.
So you're all aware that a letter went out on Friday to the property owner of the Schutz Quarry informing him that upon the completion of our investigation, it was determined that the mine had been discontinued for a period of 30 to 40 years, and based on that, it does not fulfill the legal nonconforming status. Thus, operation would require a permit, or operation would cease. Today, I intend to just go through the evidence that was looked at, so that folks who are in the audience can see it, and perhaps we can reach some closure on this issue.
Yeah. Is it ready for the Fred?
Criteria for nonconforming status requires 3 pillars. The use has to exist before the adoption of official controls. In that case, that's 1967 for Houston County. The expansion cannot go beyond the parcel boundaries at the time of official controls, and the intensity of the use cannot be increased. And the operation of the mine must not be discontinued. If there is a discontinuance, this creates a presumption of abandonment that must be rebutted. As I said, zoning was established in 1967 in Houston County. In the 1967 ordinance, mineral extraction was a conditional use. We've got historic photographs from 1947 and 1968 that show this mine. This is a photo from 1947, shows the quarry there circled. This is a photo from 1968. Again, the quarry is clearly visible. Based on that, I think it's safe to say that the quarry was in existence pre-zoning. Expansion. This is the parcel that existed at the time of zoning. It's since been split. That occurred in 2013. But we're talking about a footprint of less than an acre on a parcel that was nearly 80 and now nearly 30. Intensification. In 1968, the footprint of the mine measures 215 feet by 80 feet. That gives us 0.39 acres. 2017, the footprint, we don't do distance here, we're just doing it with modern technology, measurement around the perimeter, and we had come up with 0.62 acres. So the pit area increased 0.23 acres over 49 years. We can presume that any operation pre-zoning would have been at least at that minimal intensity. That seems to be about a very minimal intensity for a mining operation. So I think based on that, it is reasonable to conclude that the operation has not intensified. We've gone through the first 2 criteria, and the site has satisfied the first 2 criteria. Now we turn to the operation being continually in use. Here I'll show you historic photographs that suggest the site was reducing in size from 1960 to the mid-2000s. I'll show you a quarry size that's not consistent with continual operation for 50 years. I'll show you state mining permit coverage that suggests the pit was not licensed to be operated as a commercial site, or permitted, I should say, to be operated as a commercial site prior to 2007. I'll show you government procurement records that do not show any purchases prior to 2008. I'll show you tax records that suggest the site began use in the late 2000s. Landowner information that suggests the site was resumed in the late 2000s. I'll show you operator information, and I mention that because they fail to make a claim, a clear claim that it was used pre-2005. So that there's no clear statement of continual use from the 60s up until the current date from the operator, and other information. So again, here's our 1968 area photo. This is used as a proxy for zoning, and that zoning was 1967. So we assume this is the condition or the state of the site at the introduction of official controls. The next photo we have is a 1991 photo. Again, we can see the gravel road clearly shows up, but the area which was the pit in 67 looks to be vegetated. It continues to look to be vegetated in 2003 and 2004. 2006, now we see more of an outline of a pit that is the similar color of the gravel road. Again, this is a limestone pit. 2008, we see overburden being removed. 2009, we see overburden being removed. 2011, we clearly see an operational pit. and that continues up to 2015. We'll zoom out a little bit and look through the same sequence of photos. The 1968 photo, again, is the same. We clearly see it. 91, pit would be right in this area. Again, we have what looks to be a road in the modern photos. In the 2003 photo, we've got the same coloration we have on the gravel road within the pit area there, although much smaller than we had in the 1968 photo. 2004, not great resolution, but however, the area where the mine is looks more similar to the forest surrounding it than it does to the road adjacent to it. 2006, we obviously see something has changed. And again, moving up to the present day, the site becomes clearly operational. So these two photos are worth re-examining, the 68 photo and the 1991 photo. If this site were to have been continually used, this would be the result of 23 years of continual use. I would offer that these two photos do not support that. This is a 1991 photo obtained from MnDOT. It shows trees growing in the site, shows weathered limestone, is not consistent with a site that's being continually used. The notes on the back of this photograph say, take it from road facing northwest, quarry, 75 by 200 feet with 50-foot face, weathered limestone abandoned 25 years ago. Pit area. So again, in 68, we approximated this at about 0.4 acres, and again in 91, we're at about 0.4 acres. 2017, 0.7 acres. So we're seeing no increase in pit size from 68 to 91, and from 68 to 2017, we're seeing 0.3 acre increase. Permits. For any commercial operation of a gravel or sand pit, MPCA requires a permit. The general permit for non-metallic mining associated activities is a specific type of permit covering both stormwater and wastewater. It's also a multi-site permit, meaning that all qualifying sites can be covered with a single permit. The Schutz Quarry is currently covered under the non-metallic mining permit for Bonanza Grain. It was added to their permit in January 4th of 2007. They were issued 2 permits prior to that did not include the site. Looking back to 1998, which is as far back as their digitized records go, there was no permit associated with the Schutz Quarry. Again, it was added in 2007, consistent with aerial photographs. So any removal of material prior to 2007 for commercial purposes would have been a violation of whatever operator removed material from that site's permit. We looked at procurements. MnDOT does not have any records of procurements or material testing from this site. Houston County has not used this site for large projects. However, small quantities may have been purchased since 2008. This requires a paper review of records. We did not undertake that, and that there's no question that the site has been operated since 2008. The question is the period before then. We requested data from Caledonia, Mayville, Wilmington, and Winnebago townships. We received responses from 2 of those townships. Winnebago indicated they have never sourced materials from the Schutz Quarry, and Caledonia indicated that they have purchased from Cruco Bonanza Grain, but they do not track which site that material comes from. Historic quarry logs, again from the MnDOT. We have a 1965 document that lists the site, and in the remarks column it lists it as inactive. Tax records. The assessor's office, 2009, there was no quarry acres associated with this site. The same in 2012. In 2013, 5 quarry acres were added, and in 2027, or 2013, 27, later in 2013, 27 quarry acres were added. As Mr. Miner stated to you, he received some requests for information. Well, let me start. He purchased the parcel from the estate of Leo Schutz by contract for deed in 2004. He received the letter from zoning in 2008 advising that the quarry was usable. In 2009, he leases the quarry to Kruko Companies LLC. He received requests for information from current zoning office in August, November, and in January. He came in and visited with the zoning office on 3 times, and then in January 25th, he submits a written response to the letters that were sent. In his written response, the two questions that are, or 2 responses that are pertinent here, when asked, was the quarry active when you took ownership of the parcel, he indicates, no, it was not. When asked, has the quarry been continually active during the time you have owned the parcel, he indicates, no, it was not. As I understand it, the time for which it was not active was the 2004 ownership up until the lease with Kruko Rock Products in 2009. We received information from Kruko Rock Products and Ready Mix as well. They leased the property in 2009. They submitted information on December 15th. To summarize the information there, and you've all received that information as well. You received it at the same time I did, but to summarize that, they relied on past zoning decisions. They provided records to the prior zoning administrator in 2008 and 2015 that showed the continuous use. However, those records have been discarded. They have operated for a decade as a low-intensity quarry, and there's no dispute about that. It's clear that it has been operated for about a decade. They included an affidavit from the former zoning administrator, Robert Scanlon. They mentioned that they utilized it in the 90s. They state that the use of the site has not changed, and all records substantiating continuous activity in the Schutz Quarry were made available to your office in 2008 and 2015. General business records are only retained for at most 7 years. That's as close as they come to saying that it was continuously operated. So there's no clear statement asserting that the site was continuously operated from 1967 up until 2009. Past letters from zoning. So these are in the documents that I provided, and you're probably all familiar with them. There was a February 2008 initial determination and another decision made in 2015. The 2008 letter reads, Mr. Miners, the existing limestone rock quarry located on your property in the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 5 of Winnebago Township is considered to be open and usable as it is currently registered in the Houston County Quarry Log. It is named the Schutz Quarry after the former landowner. Even though the quarry is registered locally, there may be additional requirements set forth by the MPCA for best management practices relating to runoff of water, sediment, etc. If you have further questions, give me a call. And that's the text right there from them. So the issue that I take with this letter is that it's relying entirely on the 1972 list that was compiled. I've previously addressed the board regarding that list, but we'll touch on it again today. This is the advertisement that was placed in the newspaper in 1972, and I'll move this along quickly as well, that initiated the what's being referred to as the registry. And it says, notice any person or construction firm having a rock quarry, gravel, sand, or shale pit located in Houston County, Minnesota, please report same to Register of Deeds office in the courthouse of Caledonia, Minnesota, no later than August 31st, 1972, purpose being to set a special hearing for rezoning of such areas. Issues with the 1972 list. The list that actually was produced from that effort is ambiguous, and in many instances, site locations are given only by the quarter section. The information on the 1972 list was never validated, so there was no process of distinguishing between those who had a legitimate mining operation and those who may have thought it advantageous to include themselves on the list. That presumably would have been what the hearing that never occurred would have done. It was done in preparation for a hearing, and ultimately rezoning neither took place. And since the 72 process began, the county board did not act to adopt, accept, or bestow any status on the list, nor has the board subsequently taken such action. I'll read you the 2015 letter, and this one is addressed to the operators, and it's in response to a complaint, a similar complaint that we're responding to at this time. Dear Mr. Kruko, thanks for taking the time to meet with County Engineer Brian Progodinsky, Environmental Service Director Rick Frank, and myself at the Schutz Mine in Winnebago Township last Thursday. The reason for the meeting was to discuss complaints forwarded to the zoning office regarding alleged violations to State Statute 394.36 and the zoning ordinance. As we discussed, the Schutz Mine is a non-conforming mine and has been registered with the zoning office since around 1972. As a nonconformity under Minnesota statute, the lawful use or occupation of land or premises existing at the time of the adoption of official controls under this chapter may be continued, although the use or occupation does not conform to the official controls. If the nonconformity or occupancy is discontinued for a period of more than 1 year, any nonconforming building or structure is destroyed by fire or peril to the extent of 50% of its estimated market value. Any subsequent use or occupancy of the land or premises shall be a conforming use. I understand that you are leasing the property from current owner Gary Miners, with the lease property described as follows: the quarry located in the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter lying east of the public highway. The quarry is the existing hole and all future reserves. This description is taken from recorded document number 255165 as recorded in January 28, 2009. I also understand that Gary Miners and former owners have retained occupancy and or use of the property as a mine quarry since the original registration by Houston County zoning. So note there that when we're talking about continual use, and the letter will continue, but first we're not substantiating what that's based on, and secondly we're using the 1972 date and not the official control date. The Free Dictionary defines occupancy as the period during which one owns, rents, or uses certain premises or land. As this property has been historically owned, rented, and used by current leaseholders and past and current owners, it has been occupied and or used as a mine. And then he continues to discuss the need for a reclamation plan. So again, the 2015 letter does not address establishment prior to zoning. It does not address expansion or intensification. It discusses discontinuance, but it seems to conflate the terms use and occupancy, and that using the definition provided, any property would have been owned, used, or occupied. So if that's the standard, there would be no such thing as a nonconformity or an illegal nonconformity, in that all property is always in some way owned, used, or occupied. The use is overlooked here. The use as a mine is not specifically addressed. And there's no explanation of the information relied on beyond the 1972 list. It simply says, I understand. The operators also submitted in their information an affidavit of the prior zoning administrator. This was submitted on December 11th, 2017. And I'm going to read you selections from that for the sake of time. It says, Robert Scanlon, being duly sworn, disposes and says, I served as the Assistant Zoning Administrator for Houston County from 2000 to 2005. I then served as the Zoning Administrator for Houston County from 2005 to 2015. I currently serve as the Assistant Manager for the Root River Soil and Water Conservation District of Houston County. Since the 1970s, the Houston County Zoning Office has maintained a list of registered quarries. This list includes non-conforming quarries and quarries operated under conditional use permits. This list was regularly updated throughout the years. In 2008, Gary Miners came into the zoning office requesting a letter confirming the status of the Schutz Quarry. I reviewed the registered quarries list, and the Schutz Quarry was registered under Winnebago Township with the following legal description. Northwest quarter of the southwest quarter, Section 5, Township 101, Range 5. The Schutz Quarry also had the note state listed, which meant the state of Minnesota had approved this quarry for use in state projects. I then had discussions with Environmental Services Director Rick Frank regarding the status of the quarry. In these discussions, it was determined that the Schutz Quarry was a non-conforming mine. This was based on the most current information available, including but not limited to county records, aerial photographs, the registered quarries list, and conversations with other county officials. It was also well known that a number of these smaller quarries, including the Schutz Quarry, were being used on a periodic basis. Based on this investigation, there was no credible evidence that the quarry had lost its non-conforming status. On February 6, 2008, I issued a decision on behalf of the zoning office in consensus with Environmental Services that the Schutz Quarry was an existing limestone rock quarry and was considered by the county to be open and usable. On May 20th, 2015, a complaint was filed with the zoning office regarding the non-conforming status of the Schutz Quarry. The complaint alleged the quarry was in violation of Minnesota statutes 394.36 and the zoning ordinance must be shut down until a conditional use permit is granted. When a zoning complaint was filed, I investigated the matter and documented the nature and extent of the violation. I notified the suspected party of the nature and the extent of the suspected violation. I investigated the complaint thoroughly, following the process detailed in Section 10 of the Houston County Ordinance. I held an on-site meeting regarding the Schutz Quarry. I held an on-site meeting at the Schutz Quarry. Took place with operators Gary Krukow and Michael Krukow, along with Environmental Service Director Rick Frank and County Engineer Brian Pogodziński and myself. After reviewing the site, I reviewed the 2008 decision, historic aerial photographs, and any other records the county had regarding the site. Aerial photographs that were taken at various times dating back to the 1960s were inconclusive. The photos that were clear and could be zoomed in did show an open existing hole. A problem with relying on aerial photographs is that they do not show topography. Rock mining occurs in benched phases. One shot may expand the quarry's footprint, while future shots go down further, but do not expand the footprint. I was also aware the county hauled material out of the Schutz Quarry in 2008. The prior landowner operators, the Schutzes, for whom the quarry was named after, had been deceased for over a decade, so the county was unable to request any documentation or records. It was also well known that a number of registered quarries were smaller, being used periodically for local projects requiring fill material or small amounts of aggregate. Aerial photographs would not pick up on any of this low-intensity activity. I had further discussions with Rick Frank, Brian Pogodziński, and County Attorney Samuel Yant regarding the non-conforming status of the quarry. Based on these discussions and my investigation, it was the consensus that the most defensible position for the county in this instance was to confirm the Schutz Quarry was a non-conforming mine and had not lost its non-conforming use. This decision was consistent with the 2008 decision, and there was no credible evidence to support a determination that the Schutz Quarry had lost its non-conforming status due to discontinued use. On May 27, 2015, I issued a decision on behalf of the zoning office in consensus with other county departments that the Schutz Quarry was a non-conforming mine and that the current owner, Gary Miners, and former owners had retained occupancy and or use of the property as a mine quarry since the original registration by Houston County. So the process that is described as being undertaken in the affidavit is inconsistent with the contemporaneously written letters in 2008 and 2015. The historic photographs would not have changed from 2015 to the ones that were shown to you today. And lastly, the process that's being described here as being undertaken to make that determination is inconsistent with the mine re-registration process that was being undertaken by the prior zoning administrator at the same time in 2015, and we'll quickly cover that. So this was being undertaken in the first half of 2015. The 1972 list is the only criteria being applied when granting non-conforming status. Several times it references a registered mine. There's no such term in the zoning ordinance. And the process for re-registering non-conforming mines, or what we're calling registered mines during that process, is inconsistent with the process of a document review and aerial photograph review that's being described in the affidavit that was submitted recently. I'll read to you the letter again in your packets. This is a letter from July 8th, 2015, to all Houston County mine owners regarding re-registration of mine and submittal of required reclamation plan. Registration of mineral extraction sites, mine or mining sites, commenced in 1972 as an initiative of the county board to inventory the existing mine sites that had been in existence prior to that time.
Over the years, these mines have been an important resource for rock, sand, and shale in and around the Houston County area. It has been through the use of these mine sites that these mineral resources have been made available for use in road maintenance, construction, and agriculture. These mine sites have also been a valuable resource for materials during times of disaster. With that said, it is important that a more up-to-date inventory of these mine sites is done so that the county may have better information regarding these sites, as well as make adjustments to legal descriptions and follow up on reclamation plans. Based on a 3-year study commenced by the Houston County Board of Commissioners and a 1998 zoning ordinance requirement that requires the submittal of reclamation plans for any existing mine sites, the Houston County Zoning Office is hereby requesting a copy of your reclamation plan and an updated description of your mine operation. The 1998 zoning ordinance states, any mining operation legally commenced prior to the enactment of this ordinance that does not have an approved reclamation plan shall submit a reclamation plan to the planning agency for review and approval within 5 years of the date of the enactment of this ordinance. All records indicate that a mine is located on property that you own. See attached map and tax record of your property. Also see highlighted county record of your mine description. You are receiving this letter because land that you currently own was originally described as a registered mine within county records in 1972. The county's goal is to update these records. Included in this packet is a zoning ordinance section, included in this packet is zoning ordinance section that describes the ordinance requirements for a reclamation plan. Please use this as a guideline to develop your plan. Please provide a copy of said plan within 6 months of the date of this letter. In addition, please sign and return the registration form as it pertains to your property and your intent to maintain registered status. Sign one copy and keep the other for your records. Also mailed out with that letter, and again in your packets, is this form here where they ask for the operator to print their name and sign under either yes, I request to maintain my registered status as a non-conforming mine, or no, I will not re-register my mine. So in 2015, when the affidavit describes the process that was undertaken to determine whether the site was legal non-conforming or not, the same process was being done for all other sites on the 1972 list, whereby we are granting register status as a non-conforming mine based solely on the 1972 list. This letter was mailed on April 29th to Black Hammer, Brownsville, Caledonia, and Crooked Creek townships, to Hoka on July 8th, and to Houston Township on August 14th. If we look at where the zoning decision from 15 falls in there, it falls after the letter was sent to 4 of the townships, but before it was sent to the other 2. So that makes me question the recollection of the process that was undertaken in 2015 as described in the affidavit. The inconsistencies of the 2008 letter, the 2015 letter, and the 2015 registration letters rely solely on the 1972 list. The affidavit submitted recently presents a different criteria. Based on all the evidence that we've been through here, I'm unable to determine that the mine has been continuously used since 1967, and I also feel that no rebuttal was presented that would counter the evidence that overwhelmingly suggested it was abandoned in the 1960s and it was resumed mid to late 2000s. Aerial photographs support inactivity into the mid-2000s. The DOT quarry log lists the site as inactive in 1965. The DOT photograph from 1991 depicts an inactive site. State mining permit coverage begins in 2007, and there's no record of coverage prior to 2007. Tax records show no mine valuation until 2013. The owner states the site was not active when purchased and not continuously active thereafter. There was no clear statement of continual use since 1967 from the operator. Prior zoning decisions erroneously relied on the 1972 list, and the 2017 affidavit lacks credibility. So apart from the prior zoning decisions and the affidavit, all evidence supports the conclusion that the mine was abandoned in the late 1960s and resumed in the 2000s. A letter was sent to the mine owner or the property owner on Friday. Next steps would include a stop work order if necessary. We would also work with the property owner on a plan for reclamation. We've treated reclamation of non-conforming mines differently in the past than we have for what we'd approve for a CUP, but we'd have to have those conversations. And throughout this, I would look for support from the board. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Are there any questions from the board? Okay.
I would make a comment.
Yeah.
Since I've been on the board, during public comments, there have been a number of them critical of Aaron and timeframes for various issues. I want to thank you for the effort that you put into exploring this whole issue. And there's a lot to absorb here. But again, I just want to say thank you for your efforts, and I think it's an indication that these decisions just don't happen because somebody wants them to happen. There's research and research that goes into these, and thank you.
And I too admire the professionalism that you have approached this situation with. Thank you. Now, the next agenda item is the Schneider report. And Cindy?
Good morning, Commissioners. Before the Schneider report, I'd like to bring up the abatements that are in front of you. They have to go along with this quarry report, if you will.
Yeah.
I'd also like to introduce Jeff Smith from Schneider, who will be speaking.
Well,
Lewis, I'm sorry, from Schneider Beacon, who will be speaking.
well, let's let Jeff do his thing first, and then go back to the abatement, please.
I'm just going to log in here quick and pull up a presentation.
We haven't used that screen for a long time. Now we're getting a double dose. That's really something else.
Makes it easy, that's for sure. I don't have a whole lot to go over, but I'd like to at least show you some visual stuff if I can.
Jeff, could you pull that mic a little bit closer?
This one.
Yeah, it works fine. You just got to get close enough to it.
I don't have a lot to go over, but I'd like to show some visual stuff if we can, just so you can kind of get a representation of what's going on here. And we'll be doing 2 training courses today too, so if anybody's free and wants to come look at what you guys have through Beacon, or we actually have pictometry coming as well with the imagery, so anybody's welcome to come to those meetings and check them out. Basically, I just kind of wanted to go over some of the stuff that we've done so far since coming on board here. One of the biggest projects that we've done.
Excuse me. They're saying in the back they're having.
They can't hear you in the back.
You gotta have it almost right to your mouth.
Jeff, one tip on that microphone. If you can't hear yourself through the speakers, that means that nobody probably can hear you, at least not very well.
You bet.
There you go.
There's room up front too in the if you guys want to come up. Just kidding. Anyway, we've done some parcel maintenance. What we've done here is clean this up. Once we came in and saw some of the stuff that we had had here, there's a lot of gaps and overlaps in the data, and this is important for us to clean up for the sense that we can do build your ag land, which is what the assessor's office will be doing to value their ag values here soon. So we had to clean up these overlaps and gaps, and this is not an indication of any this is not an indication of anybody's work or workflows. This is just something that doesn't look like, from a GIS standpoint, has been addressed in a while. Normally, a lot of our clients will do this once a year. It looks like this has just been pushed off for quite a while. So this gives us an opportunity to come in and do some training as well to help decrease the number of splits and gaps and overlaps that we have. So this is the priority project. After that, we are looking to, I know we've got some issues in the Hoka area we want to clean up. And so we're just kind of waiting on some documentation for that to start. Some of the other stuff that we've done, the 911 project, that was a different project that wasn't involved with the staff augmentation. That was a separate project that you guys had signed. But we've handled that and got that finished and submitted to the state. The state has come back with a couple of questions, so we're going to get those cleaned up for you. The MSAG process, so that's the process of updating your 911 records. Whenever there's a new zone change or maybe a city's incorporated some areas, you need to update this MSAG. Well, that process has kind of gone away since Dan left, and so we've worked with the sheriff's office and Andy to kind of get that process down. We still need to highlight some of the different changes or some of the different areas that may be messed up, but we've kind of got that process ironed out now. We split up the databases a little bit to allow multiple editing, so Shar's team, when they're editing in the auditor's office, won't mess with Holly editing when she's editing for septics and stuff for the zoning layer. So, and the assessors has a different database, so they only have databases. They all can see the same data. They can see each other's edits, but they can all edit at the same time. In the past, they couldn't do that because if someone was editing, it would create a lock on the database. So we've kind of split them up, which I think has helped some of the workflows. We've got the zoning department using the collector application, which they can go out into the field with their iPad and collect addresses. So they can go, when they're assigning addresses, they can go out there and visually stand on that site where that driveway is or where that house is going to be and put a point so that we can then address that later. When we got here, there was some licensing issues. Some people were on different versions of the ArcGIS software. We've cleaned that up. Everybody's on the same version. And then we've created a new septic permit feature class for Holly to go in and kind of tag where those resources are, and link to the actual paper permits that she has. So those are some of the things that we've handled here in the first couple months, month or 3 months. I don't even know how long we've been on site now, but things have been going well. There's a lot of stuff. I can see a lot of stuff moving forward that's exciting to kind of bring you guys up to speed with what we can do with GIS. So that's really all I have. Do you have any questions or concerns for us, or want some clarification on some things?
I guess I'll ask my usual question. Splits.
As far as in the GIS side of the house, that's being done in the auditor's office as far as the GIS is concerned.
We kind of were looking at, before we made any decisions, getting those gaps and overlaps cleaned up. And there's different ways we can go forward with this. One is that we could just hand it over right now to Schneider. It would be no extra cost, and I do believe that was the intent months ago to do. We are at a point where that could be a smooth transition now that all the gaps and overlays are cleaned up and things are cleaned up right now.
Okay, because as I recall, clearly the intent was to relieve the auditor's office to provide time for other issues, as long as this could be done through Schneider.
We can do the GIS splits. We can't do the splits within the auditor's database. So we can do the GIS part of it.
What you would be doing is drawing them in after the fact, correct?
Correct. We'd be drawing them in and
We
change.
already draw them in, and that's part of our process in figuring out what is being put on the acres are. That would be redundant.
Well, it would also keep these splits in the past that have had the gaps and the overlaps has gone on for years. Am I correct?
I don't know when the last time the data was cleaned up, so I
Yeah,
can't.
and so it's finally been cleaned up. That could make it where there's one entity doing the work. You did say there was a way where they could do the work and see that was clear, but we still would have another database. Is that how?
There's a lot of ways to do it.
Okay.
Everybody has a different way of maintaining the parcel database. Basically, from the standpoint of reviewing a survey or looking at a survey, people can draw that in and verify whether that survey is accurate, whether that survey closes. Just because a survey closes doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate, but making sure that new parcel fits within the parcel fabric that you guys have. So that's something that every office probably does. The auditor's office, the assessor's office. I don't know if the recorders actually mess with the GIS side of it, but everybody within the county should be looking at that parcel to make sure it fits into the parcel fabric that you have. It's a team effort in that sense that, the assessor looks at it from a value standpoint as far as if you're starting to look at the ag land values, whereas the auditor is more looking at it on the taxation side as far as, does it fit within that fabric? Does it fit within that tax district? Does it overlap other boundaries? So there's a lot at play there. We can help with the GIS side of it if we need to. So.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, would you say that by doing this and the overlaps and stuff, have you done anything to take anything from the auditors?
No.
As far as splits or anything go?
No, we haven't taken any workload off of anybody at this point. All we did was clean up the database, which was a priority for us in the sense that we needed to do that because you guys have some ag land software that we need to implement within the assessor's office, and those gaps and overlaps needed to be cleaned up so we could start to build this land use layer so that we can then move forward with valuing the land within the software.
Great, thank you.
Jeff, how are we doing on the special projects and other things as far as not just specifically special projects, but just generally, how are we doing with the amount of time that we need from you and the amount of money that we have contracted for? How's that shaking down so far? Do you have any feel for that yet?
Yeah, so a lot of the time, so right now, if I believe the way it's contracted is we're on site once a month and you have what we call 12 project or 12 flex hours a month for us to work on those special projects. Those hours have been used the last 3 months to clean up that parcel data, to clean up that topology, as well as build some of the other stuff off-site, some of the stuff that we did for the zoning office. So we're right on target. We've used those hours to clean up the parcel database. Now we're ready to look at those other special projects that we've kind of highlighted, which I think the priority was right now was cleaning up the HOKA area. There was some issues in the HOKA area. So we're just waiting on that documentation. That would be the next priority project for us to do.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
So right now, we're within the budget that we have set with you.
Absolutely. Yep. No, and my sales guy's not here. He would try to sell you parcel maintenance on the side, and I basically said we could handle that within the project hours that we have allocated. So there is time for us to do that if we need to do that.
Any further questions for Jeff? Okay. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Cindy, you had something else you wanted to talk about a moment?
Yes, I have. I believe you should have copies of abatements. I'd like to explain these to you.
Yeah.
I'd also like to make it known that anybody can apply for an abatement. I have to accept their application, and it is totally 100% up to you whether it goes through or not. That's just.
I'm sorry, I missed that. It's 100% what?
I have to accept the application for abatement.
Okay.
It is up to you whether you grant it. I just want to make that clear. The first one I'm going to speak about is the one here that's labeled for taxes levied in 2014, payable 2015. Actually, the first three would be payable 15, payable 16, payable 17. We are allowed to go back 3 years in taxes when there's an issue has arisen or arises. The issue here was in 2013, April of 2013, one of the staff members in our office changed the classification and therefore the valuation of land acreage on this parcel. This parcel became 100% mine. Generally in this county, we only put mine values on the active acres, not the woods acres. I believe this was 29 some acres that was entirely, or mostly woods. There was about 1 acre of that open area that was discussed the last hour. This not only doubled the taxable value. In 2013, woods was valued at $2,000 an acre. Extra mine acres were at $5,000. So that was a significant difference. You also look at the classification code difference. Homestead is a 1%. I'm sorry, agricultural homestead was at a 0.5%. Non-homestead agriculture is a 1%. And this was at a 1.5%. So that was a significant increase also. I can only speculate on why this was changed. I have no idea why it was changed exactly. I believe it's the only one that's in the county that was changed. I have to this day yet to see another one, not to say there might not be one out there. But that being said, the overpayment in taxes for these 3 years because of that change are $2,891, $2,935, $2,856. The request is to return that to Mr. Miners in the form of an abatement. The fourth abatement is for payable 2018 taxes. This is not a monetary payback since 18 taxes have not been paid. This is an actual tracking of the changes. Changes for errors or situations like this need to be made before July 1st. We have a local board of review, then we come to the county in June. If they're not made by July 1st, the only way they can be made is through an abatement that's being tracked. This is a policy that is new to this county, but it's not new to the state. The tracking change would be $1,915. This money is not lost revenue to the state or to the county or any of the jurisdictions, since this land value will be changed before the calculation of the new taxes going out. So these three are actual loss in revenue. This fourth one is not. It's just a tracking to make the correction.
Okay, I believe that normally in the, or historically, whatever, in the past, we have not abated for more than a year back. And I know there have been others that have not had it abated, but we'd be setting a precedent here that I'm not sure we want to do.
I understand that. I'm allowed to go 3 years. It is up to you. That's to make your decision.
Shar, is that not a fact? Shar, is that not a fact that we've only abated? Pardon?
Assessor did have that policy.
Of 1 year. Yeah.
So you're saying you're allowed to go back 3.
I believe that's what the state is, yeah.
You don't have to go back 3.
You do not have to, you do not have to grant any
No.
abatement.
No, I mean,
It's-
you said you're allowed to go back 3.
That's right.
Are you mandated to go back 3?
No.
Mandated to go back 1 at all?
Well, I would imagine if there's a correction and you agree to it, that would,
Right.
you'd have to go back at least one.
Right.
Now, Cindy, do I understand it that state law allows you to go back 3? Is that where this allows comes from, or where does it come from?
I can't, but at this particular point, I can't tell you where exactly that's stated. But I know that
Okay.
I can go back 3. But that doesn't mean you have to by yours.
I know in the past, we've done quite a few of these, and we've always gone back 1 year. I guess that would be, my question would be the precedence that has been set, that others would come back and say, well,
Yeah,
we only went 1, how come we only got to go back 1? That would be my concern.
Explain, and I see, the homestead and non-homestead got switched, evidently, is part of the abatement. The other abatement is because it was a mine and it's not a mine.
I would say that the biggest portion of this abatement is the fact that there were over 20 acres of woods taxed and valued at $5,000 an acre instead of the original going rate of $2,000 an acre. That is the majority of it. Then when you add the commercial higher class rate on top, it compounds.
Okay. So there's a couple issues, 3 issues in total at least. Counting the whole mine and not just the area of mining,
That's one, yes.
right?
The classification, the second
Then
one.
the second, whether it's a mine or not,
Right.
and then the third would be
Whether it's...
dead non-homestead.
Yes, and the year prior to this, it was, I believe, 75-acre parcel, and well, the correction, or the split was completed in January, but it was earlier in the year. That was, a lot of those acres were split off, and it was left with the woods. At that point, any homestead would have gone away anyway. For the year 2 years later, we always go, whatever it was January 1st of a given year is the value taxed the following year. So it may have still been homestead for that 1 more year, and then it went to non-homestead at the same time that it was going from woods to mining and commercial.
Cindy, what brought this to light now?
This was brought to light to me from the zoning department. They asked the question as if this was a policy of mine, and it's not.
Well, personally, to me, Cindy, I want your reaction to this, but personally, to me, we have a precedent for going back 1 year without a problem, but we really don't have a precedent for going back more than that.
That's a decision completely up to you.
Yeah, and I'm uncomfortable with going back more than that without knowing some pretty solid evidence as to why and where it comes from that we can actually do this and all that sort of thing. I'm just not comfortable going back.
Fred, it would be
3
speculation
years.
on my part, because I believe that the two that may have the answers no longer work for our county. So I would be speculating how this all happened, or why.
Yeah.
I will mention, though, that when you look at it on the aerial, approximately a quarter to a half mile south of this is another larger, more active mine that was not treated this way within the same township. So it's my belief from what I've seen that this was an isolated incident. For whatever reason, I cannot tell you. I don't know.
I think you've stated, though, that we have a precedent that we approve these abatements for 1 year. I think that's what we should do with this, at this point, too.
Yeah, I feel very strongly that we need to do that for sure. And
I'll make a
I
motion
just,
to
I'm
approve
very
the abatement
unsettled
for 1
about the
year.
rest of it. I'm not, because of the circumstances that have been described to us, I'm uncomfortable with not granting all 3 years, but on the other hand, the precedent is 1. And
May
I
I
really
make
don't
a-
have that sorted out yet, so I'm not ready to do it.
Hang on. Teresa kind of had a motion.
That's why I was making a motion to approve the abatement.
Okay,
for-
you're making a motion.
Yes.
Bingo, okay.
So you're talking for taxes payable 17? Is that correct? Do I understand that correctly?
For 17, it would be right.
Yeah, the most
That's
recent year.
that's what I was
That
trying
would be
to.
the 1 year.
If you're making a motion to hold it to 1 year on abatement of monetary money back, that would probably be for your 17.
Okay.
Please allow 18 to still sit out there.
Okay.
Okay, we've got a motion. Did you second it?
I have not, but I will.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I think we need clarification again. So approving abatement for 17, but you still need an improvement for abatement basically on 18, correct?
Exactly, or I cannot correct those values going into the taxable year 18, which would allow him to probably come back next year and ask for an abatement on 18. So correct it ahead of time and not lose those monies to the jurisdictions is what I'm thinking.
Well, should we do 17
And
now, and then we
18.
can come back at 18, or you want to do them both? You
I
can
think-
amend your motion?
I will amend my motion to include 17 and 18.
Okay.
Okay.
Second will still stand.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, Tess, you're next.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I asked Cindy, Assessor Cresswell, to join me. We have a recommendation for the approval of changing Michelle Quinn's employment status as an appraiser trainee from probationary to regular status effective February 21st, 2018. And I've received the review for Ms. Quinn, and she comes with excellent recommendations for this change of status. Is there anything you'd like to add? Any training she's completed?
Both of our staff have completed successfully their first classes. They have 3 more due in July, every other week in July, which they're going to be saturated with knowledge, but then they should complete that satisfactory and become official certified assessors.
I'll make a motion to approve Michelle Quinn moving from probationary to
Regular?
regular status.
There you go.
Second.
All right, we've had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
And we've put this off for a little while because there was this next item because of all the pending work that was going on and the 2 appraiser trainees that were going through the process. But at this time, we're bringing back to the table recommendation for your support to approve us initiating a competitive search for a 3rd appraiser trainee. This person, as you recall, it takes a year to get an appraiser trainee up to speed as an appraiser. And we do have a retirement of our only other appraiser that is a full-fledged appraiser besides Ms. Cresswell retiring soon.
And when is the retirement?
Has not, the date hasn't been formally set, but it's coming up within a year.
He's indicated that it could be midsummer 19, but that's not an official.
Midsummer of 19?
19, I'm sorry, 19.
I shouldn't
And-
say within a year. It'd be
Slightly over.
over a year.
He's
And he has
talking
submitted
July.
that in writing, that is his intention, and that is, but we don't have an exact date. And the reason we bring these forward when we do is because of the training involved with, that Carl would be delivering in part.
Another thing, too, this is the first 2 when we came and were allowed to post were to replace Carl originally and myself. We have since lost a person, and that would just bring us back up to, in a year, from July, we would be back to 3 appraisers, all being all new. Keep in mind, a few years back, we used to have 4 appraisers. So we're still not going to be up to what we ever were at the high end, but this is just to replace the one that we no longer have. Because myself and
Right
Carl
now,
were
we have
replaced.
4 appraisers, 4 in the office now?
No, we have myself as the assessor. We have our tech, who, by the way, will be out of the office till probably end of April. We have Carl, who has been there for 20-some years, and our 2 new appraisers. If we lose Carl without a replacement, I will be relying on the 2 new appraisers only. And they would be just not even fulfilling their first year of being appraisers.
So at the
And I
time
would-
when the previous assessor, at the time he was exiting the office, there were 3 full-time, fully trained appraisers in addition to him. So what we have now is 1 with 2 in training, and we're asking for this one to bring us up to where we were a year ago.
Well, I would.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I would think it would be extremely valuable to have a new hire there to work with, beside Carl, or I mean, with Carl, and learn the ropes while Carl's still here.
I agree. Carl is one of the best teachers I've ever run under and had the privilege to work with. Another thing I would like to mention is if we get someone hired by May or June, this person can accompany the other 2 trainees through the next 3 courses. The 3 can learn together, which is also a great asset.
I believe we basically went through this before, and then you lost a position.
Exactly.
So we're just basically replacing the position you lost.
Correct, and we waited until later because we didn't feel that we could have 3 trainees in the office and keep all 3 busy throughout the winter.
We had to stage them to be successful.
I'll make a motion to approve the search for a new appraiser position.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, so go over this with me because now I'm kind of lost here. I was trying to mark down everything that happened. Originally, we were down 1, correct?
Can I ask for clarification when you say originally what date you're talking about?
Good point. I'm referring back to about a year ago when we first hired the 2 new positions. Or, well, when Michelle came over, we said we were down 1, you had mentioned, correct? And we had been for a couple of years, right?
No. Okay, another clarification.
There you go. Yes.
Diane Allen retired in 2011. And
Yes.
An appraiser was not hired to fill that position.
Right.
It was eliminated.
Okay.
And
Thank
then-
you, Carol. So
and-
so we'll say down 1 at that time. Okay. She wasn't
Okay.
filled, right? Help me on the timeline.
Okay, then
so,
the
okay,
next
so then
thing was I became assessor, so we
okay,
were
so
down
now
2.
we're down 2.
Yes.
Okay. So now okay, so it was Diane and then
Myself.
Cindy, right? Okay. So
So
then
I want to interrupt. Did we have 5 to begin with? 5 appraisers?
4 plus Tom and Mike.
okay.
Well, okay.
Okay, good. Yeah, good call, Teresa. So, okay, so then we're down 2 with you moving up.
Yes.
Okay. So then Michelle came on, right?
Well, no, then we requested the position open for 2, 1 replacing me and 1 replacing Carl. We
Right.
weren't considering replacing Diane at that time because we hadn't in the past.
So then we've got those 2. So we still are down 1 because Diane's was not filled.
Correct.
Correct. And then that's where we are today.
No, we're down Mike too.
Can I just intervene? If you will, I'll just put names to names, although it's not exactly the way it's done, but Cindy left,
Yep.
let's say Michelle came.
Yep. So okay.
Carl
so then
is
Michelle
going
would
to be,
take okay.
Carl's going to be leaving. Let's
Yep.
say Luke came.
Okay.
Mike Paulson left. That's the new gap.
Okay. So, but we still don't have.
Make sense? Plus Diane.
Right. There we go.
However, let me say that although I haven't had lengthy discussions with the department head about this, there is some discussion as with potential attrition in other areas of our office going forward. We'll see how we will approach any other positions. So, for instance, if besides the appraiser positions, we have a tech position. So at what point in time in the future might we have combined positions? And we've reserved that conversation for when it might be relevant at a later date, so that Diane's position is kind of off the table, has been temporarily because of that discussion.
Okay.
And that was
I
prior
think
to
it's-
your, that was your
I think
predecessor.
it would be easier not to say we're down an employee, but, 3 years ago, we had a department head and we had 3 assessors.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we have a department head, we have 1 assessor.
And 2
who is
trainees.
going to retire, or appraiser, who is going to retire.
Yeah.
And that's the position you need to make sure you have covered when he leaves, so you're not in the only 2 appraiser trainees
Mm-hmm.
positions.
Mm-hmm.
So until that retirement, you're going to have 1 extra body in there, but it's.
This was also
Right.
budgeted for when we did our budget.
And it's a year training, so
Right.
that's why we have to think about these things ahead of time, and it is in the budget.
My only, the reason why I was asking was because I was getting confused when we had talked about replacing Carl and now we're replacing Carl again. You know what I mean? That was the confusing. I was forgetting.
And he's not
I guess I
leaving
didn't
for
realize
another
Mike
year.
wasn't.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
I mean, I was getting confused in who are we replacing here. So that's why I was trying to.
Kind of how it's being stated, but this is what I was taking it as.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That we went through this hiring ahead before knowing our retirement was coming.
Right. This is more to replace the one we lost.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Now I know what's going on.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioners. Moving on to Human Services. Director Puglisa is going to join us here. We have a resignation that will be effective February 12th, 2018, and that is of Julie Windham, and we respectfully request that you acknowledge Julie's service to the residents of the county for 8.5 years and accept her resignation. And would you like to say something as Julie's department head?
Julie's done a great job for us for a number of years. She's been an important part of our team in our economic assistance division as a financial worker. She is leaving to pursue an advancement in her career, so we're happy for her, but kind of sad for us.
I'll make a motion to approve Julie Windham's retirement.
No.
Resignation. Approve her resignation, and I'd like to thank her for 8.5 years of dedicated service to Houston County.
Second.
That doesn't call for discussion, except to add the thanks. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, those opposed obviously passed.
Thank you. And that brings us to our next item, which is that we recommend approval that we are able to initiate a competitive search for a financial worker, and to do that post haste because of the need.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Those opposed? Okay. Motion carried.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Tess. Your test isn't done.
Oh, and have one more item for the sheriff's office.
Yep.
I'm not sure.
They're here.
Yep.
I saw him back there a moment ago.
Yep.
Scott, did you notice that John got the memo on the shirts, but
Yeah.
others didn't?
Yeah, I noticed. They didn't all get it. I think they got it. They just don't read it or open it. I ain't doing that shit. Yeah.
Okay, Mark. Morning.
So, Commissioners, in your packet was included was a resolution, which for the sheriff's office we have a for PERA purposes. There are times when temporary part-time employees go into are eligible, I should say, for retirement, and the county makes contributions towards that retirement, and we're required to pass a resolution in that acknowledges and supports that as a formal body. So that's what you have there. This resolution is for the benefit of Deputy Lukes.
I read through the resolution. I will make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign? No. Motion carried.
Thank you. Please note this doesn't change Deputy Luke's status as a temporary 67-day employee. And it is, like I said, he just met the eligibility requirements. So we need that resolution on that point. And I believe, let me double check, that is all for my regular agenda.
Good.
We have 4 minutes prior to the closed session. And Chair, are we allowed to go into closed session at
You
an
can go
earlier
early.
time?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a public hearing where it's posted. It's just,
Thanks, so. You're ready, you're ready.
right.
Then pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 Subdivision 2B, I request that this body go into closed session for the preliminary consideration of allegations or charges against an individual subject to its authority. Please note that this meeting may be opened at the request of the individual who is the subject of the meeting. I do not
I don't believe he's here, though.
believe he is here to do that.
Okay. No.
Okay, at this time, I make that request to go into closed session.
Yeah.
We need a motion.
Motion to go into closed session?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are going to closed session.
I think so. I'll make a motion to come out of closed session.
Second.
Okay. We're out of closed session, and we will at this point take a 5-minute or somewhat less, perhaps, recess. Okay. Let's see. What do we need at this point to go back into open session?
I'll make
A
a
motion.
motion to go back into
Bingo.
open session.
Somebody
Second.
do that.
Who made the second?
I did.
Okay.
By way of...
All those in favor say
Oh,
aye.
sorry.
Aye.
We're in open session. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I jumped the gun there. The board met in closed session pursuant to 13D05 Subdivision 2B for the preliminary consideration of allegations against Mr. Bruce Shores, who is a jailer dispatcher and reports to the sheriff. Commissioners.
Do we have a motion?
I'm looking at you.
Right.
You're the more verbal one.
Well, I'm not sure I would make a motion to terminate Mr. Shores based on the report of allegations that we received in closed session.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you, Commissioners. And my last point of business for today is the pay equity report that was submitted to you folks for your consideration, review, and approval. The county is required to do these reports every 3 years for the state of Minnesota. We look at pay levels, we look at pay structures, and of course the method of determination of classification is reviewed. There are several statistical analyses that are done that the state has it's a fairly automated system. It's a lot of data entry at the front end, but the statistical analysis is done through an automated system. It appears, and we will hear from the state one way or the other, but it appears that we have more than met the minimum requirement to pass the statistical analysis test and our comparison of female employee pay to male employee pay. So I believe that we're in good shape. Their statisticians will let us know.
They didn't make that easy to read, did they?
And I'm looking for a motion in support of the
Do we have a
document.
motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? I spent a fair amount of time with Tess, I think it was last week, or was it yesterday, I don't remember, going through this, and
Last week.
yeah, I'm glad it's only every 3 years. It would be nice if it were every 5 instead, but okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
This will be posted and in our office as well as on union posting boards. It'll be sent to each collective bargaining agreement. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Mark, annual report.
The first thing I have on the agenda is it's a contract renewal for tower space that we lease from Lawton and Associates or Lawton Trust. Attorney Yant and I worked closely on this. There was a fair amount of negotiating that went back and forth between Attorney Yant and the mediator for the trust company. But I guess the key change is that it's a renewal. We've been with on this tower since I believe 1994. The key changes would be the term of the lease. It's a 2-year. They would like 5, but we negotiated it down to 2 because I believe wholeheartedly we can get away from this VHF transmitter within the next 2 years. So then the other key change is a 3% annual increase to the contract. And then the only other request I would have is originally they wanted to make this effective January 1, but there was some negotiating that was still going on. So what I'd ask is that we make this retroactive back to February 1st of this month.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we've had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? The amount of the contract seemed like quite a bit to me for what we're getting, but
Be hard to argue that one, Commissioner. It's a slight increase from what we've been paying for the last 3 years. But that's why the 5-year contract would have, with annual increases, would have been about a $37,000 contract. Like I said, we're trying to move away from needing that VHF transmitter, and I wholeheartedly believe in the next 2 years we'll be able to get away from that.
okay. Any further discussion? And we did have a motion, didn't we? Yeah, okay. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Same sign. Okay, motion carried.
Did you say yes?
Yeah.
We're just leasing space.
Sheriff's annual is on your desk.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The
Now
other
annual report.
The other thing is the annual report for the Sheriff's Office. Due to time constraints, we'll just kind of go through this quickly, and I'll just highlight some of the areas. The Sheriff's Posse, again, is very active and stable. They dedicated 387 hours of their time to the citizens in Houston County this past year. They were heavily involved in 2 incidents on the Mississippi River, one being the drowning victim from La Crosse and one being the fatal boating crash from this summer down near Brownsville. Social media is doing well. We use it to engage with the public and inform them of a variety of information. We're over 5,000 followers and nearly 5,000 page likes, so I believe that's working well. Prescription drug drop box is doing well. Last year we took in a little over 95 pounds of prescription medication, and that brings us to a total of 311 pounds since we started in October of 15. The ALICE training, we're still continuing with that. That is doing well. They did a drill in Caledonia schools here a few months ago, and it was quite impressive. Every single school was completely evacuated in less than a minute. So I think we're on the right track, and we're doing everything we can to make our schools as safe as we can. That's in conjunction with our police departments. Under the administrative division, 427 gun permits applications were processed through the Sheriff's Office. Moving on to our K-9 program, as you're well aware, the K-9 program went through some rough times this year.
Sure. Just a quick question on the permits. Do you find, have you turned down many?
I believe, if memory serves me correct, I think we We denied 5 of them this year. So the canine, like I said, went through some rough times. November 15th, of course, is when our newest canine was killed by a motor vehicle. We're continuing to search for a new dog. We're close to that at this time. Lieutenant Erickson is anyways. I'm enthusiastic about the Canine Foundation. While they're not an entity of the Sheriff's Office, this group of citizens has really stepped forward to help us out in our canine program, and I believe they'll continue to do that. The Towards Zero Death Initiative, that was, again, we participated in that. That's through the Office of Traffic Safety. Basically, we put on extra shifts for seatbelt, DWI, and speed enforcement. Some of the local police departments participate with us, and that's all reimbursed through the Office of Traffic Safety. This year, Office of Traffic Safety selected Houston County to do their annual kickoff in the spring, which is an honor to have them select you. And we chose Wildcat Landing for our kickoff, and then that's where they took the photograph for the annual TZD poster. And I'd also like to extend a big thank you to the Caledonia Argus for their generous donation of printing services to make that poster possible. The Investigations Division, not anything extraordinary to report there other than that we had some changeover in our narcotics investigation. He did some field training with the task force up in Rochester for about 8 weeks or so. So he was getting on his feet down here late in the year. So, but he's had some success. He served several search warrants already and made 4 felony arrests. About a little over 30 grams of methamphetamine were seized, and a little over 50 grams of marijuana out of those search warrants. Civil process continues to be busy. There's 782 service attempts, and sheriff's deputies served 419 papers this last year. Emergency management is doing well. Olivia Naide, as you know, is our emergency management director. She's been doing a good job of getting the emergency management on the right course. Got our county emergency operations plan approved by not only you, the board, but also by the state. Detention and dispatch division, that's an area that I'd like to highlight a little bit. As you know, we typically, our detention deputies not only serve in the jail, but they also do our dispatching 24 hours a day. Typically, there's 1 dispatcher on duty per shift, and they are clearly busy. They received almost 4,000 911 calls last year. And I think it's important to keep in mind that every time they receive a 911 call, they're not only dispatching law enforcement, but they're likely paging an ambulance or first responders or fire department and those types of things. So there's a lot of moving parts with each 911 call that comes in. The other thing that we were able to implement this year with a partnership with Gunderson Lutheran and Tri-State Ambulance is the emergency medical dispatching. That is going really well. I just think it's a wonderful program. It doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. Every time there's a medical call, we automatically transfer to the EMD, and at bare minimum, they at least have somebody on the other end of the line that can talk to them through the process until help arrives. The jail itself, I believe, did well this year. Our average daily population continues to increase. 2017, our average daily population was 31.6 inmates. Staff booked in a total of 587 persons into the Houston County Jail. This year we were able to generate just a little over $297,000 in revenue to help offset the costs. And I'm proud to say that the jail came in under budget by just over $99,000. That didn't happen by accident. I think the staff is all working together as a team to make something like that happen. Our calls for service, while our ICRs, our initial complaint reports, were down at just slightly 1.5% drop in those. Our calls for service increased about a little over 4% with 4,126 calls for service. Calls for service by month. This is a little bit unusual. Typically, December is not our busiest month, but this year it was, where we had 453 calls for service in December. And this is pretty normal, I guess, for times of our calls. Between 3 p.m. and 11 p.m. are our busiest times. For statistical data, domestic disturbance and thefts were our two highest reported crimes or investigated crimes. Agency assists, this occupies a significant amount of our deputies' time where they're assisting other agencies like Caledonia Police Department and so forth. It's a reflection on the good working relationship I think we have with those. Some of the departments don't have 24-hour coverage, so some of those assists are where we're actually taking the call because they have nobody on duty at the time. And sometimes we will refer that call to them if it's something that we can do that with, or otherwise our deputies will take the call and take it through to the end. Traffic enforcement, deputies initiated 1,568 stops this year, 1,307 warnings were issued, and 253 traffic citations. 21 DWI arrests were made. Motor vehicle crashes, I mean, that's just statistical numbers there. We did unfortunately have 2 fatal crashes in Houston County this year, both of them being motorcycle crashes. Water patrol, 208 hours were spent on the river doing water patrol. They were involved in 2 search and recovery operations, and one boat driver was arrested for boating while intoxicated. Budget overview.
Mark?
Yes.
Just a question. And
Sure.
Maybe,
on what part?
well, citations issued on the water. One, I don't know, having personally, had a boathouse in Lawrence Lake, spent numerous hours on the river, still do. It just seems like more citations could be written.
What we direct the water patrol deputies to do is if it's something very outrageous, then we take enforcement action through way of citation. I don't dispute what you're saying, but I think the bigger part is the visibility of us out there.
Is it harder to, like, you look at on a road, if somebody's drinking and driving, they're obviously swerving in the lanes, so you have reason to pull them over. But obviously with a boat, you don't really have, I don't know that they are just randomly pull people over. Is it more because how do you have a reason?
It's typically because we've had contact with them for some other reason.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Or they're clearly driving recklessly.
Sure.
Which you can attribute to their level of intoxication.
Gotcha. Yep. Sure. Makes sense.
Thank you.
One quick question, Mark.
Yeah.
In your enforcement categories, should you add a distracted driving category?
We certainly could.
How much of that do you see?
I
We
don't
hear a
know.
lot about it in the press, we're wondering.
Right. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head for that particular violation.
Yeah.
But it's a fair amount, but I don't know what the number would be. It's a hard case to prove, to go issue citations for, because you have to physically be able to see them with their phone, and actually, it takes more than just them holding the phone in their hand to get a conviction in court on that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
The budget overview, again, I don't want to go through and read everything to you. We did have a 5.6% increase in revenues that we collected, which is a positive thing, obviously. $144,272 in total fees and reimbursements. We had about $51,369 that we applied to for grants. Now that covers our water patrol grants and so forth as well, but it's still money that we're going after so that we don't have to levy the taxpayers for. So combined total is $195,641 for the revenue generated. The overall expenditures for the sheriff's office, we came in pretty much right on budget. There is an overage of $331, so basically less than 0.2% over budget. So I like to break this down into cost per citizen. We're able to provide our 24-hour coverage and all the services and programs we provide for the county at $82 a citizen per year. That seems like a very reasonable amount of money when you break it down that way.
Are we getting many prisoners from Winona, Fillmore?
We're getting a few from Fillmore every once in a while. That's very sporadic.
Okay.
Winona is still under their contract, so we're housing a minimum of 15 of them. We've been up to, I believe, at one point we were housing almost 20 for Winona at some point during the year.
How long does that contract run, Mark?
Runs through the end of this year.
And
then
that's,
we'll
that's
reevaluate.
pretty close to, we're running 40-50% of our inmates are Winona.
Pretty much, yes. Yeah.
So start calling this Winona South?
Yep.
All right,
Get up
any
to
other
60,
questions?
it's gone, that's Winona.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
All right.
Thanks, Travis.
I forget all about that.
Okay. Approve claims, human service and license center disbursements.
I'll make a motion to approve the claims.
So, second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Airport Commission, Brian had a funeral that he needed to attend this morning, so he isn't here to talk about that. It really hasn't made a whole lot of progress. He's talked with, I talked to Brian yesterday about this, and he has talked to the Flyers about it, and he hasn't heard back. We'd like to have 2 people from the Flyers and a couple of other community members, and the one person I was going to talk to, I will talk to tomorrow at an EDA meeting about it. So there really isn't anything to act on there at this point.
As far as that goes, I talked to a member of the Chamber of Commerce for Caledonia, and they asked if we would have somebody come to their meeting and explain what we'd be expecting of somebody to possibly be on a board or a committee for the airport. And they have a meeting on February 8th at the farmhouse at 8 a.m., I believe. I'm going to be out of town.
28th or 8th?
8th.
Yeah.
Was that was a single digit, 8, right?
8, right.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Or if we could even get correspondence to them so they could read it off at their meeting, I'm sure would be fine.
What time is that meeting, Scott?
8 a.m., I believe.
8
Or
o'clock?
8 p.m.
8
I'm
p.m.
sorry,
That makes a difference.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
okay.
does.
I'll talk to Brian about it. We'll see that it gets
Okay.
covered. Okay,
Great.
thank you. Approval voting equipment grant. And that was in the packet.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to approve the voting equipment grant.
Second.
Any further discussion? Shar, do you have anything more on it?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Revisit board's appointment to Planning Commission. What we did was sort of appoint Scott and I both to be on the Planning Commission, and that doesn't work for them because of the number of people that are supposed to be there. So we need to change that to be one be the appointee and the other be the alternate. So
You need a motion to,
We need a motion for
And who
one of
wants
us
to
to
be
be the
the-
appointee and the other one the alternate.
and
Who wants to be the appointee?
who wants to be the appointed?
I'll do it.
Fred graciously volunteered.
And Scott, will you be the alternate?
Yes.
He didn't twist my arm all the way off. They're both here yet, but.
I would move then that we appoint Fred as the planning commission member and Scott as the alternate.
Second.
The intent there is that we'll basically share the position, but it's just a paperwork thing. They couldn't deal with it, so. Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Approve post-issuance tax compliant procedures for tax exempt bonds.
It actually has to do with our refinancing that we did in December, and we have to complete the IRS Form 8038. And they added a box asking if you had written procedures and practices in regards to the bond money that you receive and how you handle it. We didn't have written procedures, you know, we followed all of these things, you know, we don't use the money for the things we're not supposed to, we track what we're supposed to, we have our arbitrage, but it wasn't put into a written form, and Bond Trust Services was kind enough to put everything together that we need in there to satisfy the IRS requirements. But like I said, it's not anything different than what we've been doing, it's just in written form now. And we can check the IRS box that says, yes, we have it in written form.
All right, motion to approve post-insurance tax compliance procedures for tax exempt bonds.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Adopt resolution approving 2017 grace period.
This actually has to do also with federal grants that we were awarded a couple of years ago. They said there were going to be a lot of new things that you had to make sure you cover in your procurement policies and your other policies. We have adopted a procurement policy that satisfies the requirements, but having the ability to adopt or pass a resolution to accept the extension means that if something were to come up in our 2017 audit that our policy didn't cover, that we would have that grace period where we wouldn't have a finding for that, and we'd be able to amend our policy so that in 2018 transactions, we wouldn't have those issues.
Make a motion to adopt resolution approving 2017 grace period.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Now, the additional agenda item, the Board of Equalization scheduling, and give us that date again.
June 19th at 6 o'clock PM during our regular evening meeting. And we need a motion if that is agreeable.
So
make-
move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Those in
We
favor?
need to have more people be certified besides myself. Because last year I broke my shoulder the day before, but I waited surgery till the day after because I had to be here.
I'm also certified. I'm also certified.
Okay.
And I'm a member of
But
that
you know,
board.
you can do it right online, at least we're covered.
Well, and you could be a little more careful.
I don't plan on doing it this year. But I'm just saying, it would be
Okay.
helpful if there was more than,
Yeah.
and you can do it right online, it's very easy. Cindy can give you the website. and-
Answers? Oh.
Oh.
Well, the answers, they're pretty obvious, actually. I thought it was pretty easy, but, and they print you a certificate right away.
Oh, you just hit print and it comes right out.
Uh-huh.
Marvelous.
Gotta have that.
Okay. All those in, yeah, we've had the
Yep.
motion discussion. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Those opposed, motion carried. Okay. Now, Shar, what do we need to do with that public notice of board retreat?
Oh, this is just consent agenda, just approve it to put it on file.
Make a motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Discussion items. Now, yeah, okay. Anything?
Quick, let's see.
Well, we should start from the other end.
I have, the main thing that, and Scott and I both went to it, so we can actually add to discussion on, we went to that training by the state demography department. They are going around the state. We were the first ones, and it was very informative. We found out that we actually do not do the census county at all. Our role is just to encourage every single person, every single human being in the county to fill out the forms either online or mail them in. Because and I did run off showing you how we get that $1,500 per person. And it also affects the amount of representatives we have in the state. And right now, the state of Minnesota is losing population, so they might not have enough for all 8. So they're really pushing every single county to get everybody to vote. Not vote, fill out the census form. And you don't have to be a citizen, it's just counting the human being itself. So there's no penalties.
The biggest thing we took from this is that if you can just get the people to be counted, not so much a lack of finding them. What they do is they send out a notice, a 10-question packet for you to fill out and mail back in. If you don't fill it out, you go on the list. Census Bureau sends somebody to the door of that address that didn't fill it out. But they get funding to hire people to do this from the federal government. Well, that's been cut in half since it was in 2010. So half the funding they used to have. And in 2010, Winona put a big effort into it because their enrollment was showing declining. So they, in 2000, so they put a huge effort in 2010 to try to show that they didn't believe it declined, it increased. Well, they went with these people, helped them go door to door, go to the colleges, everything. They said they ran out of money before they even finished their county. So they said, now within half, they said the biggest thing is, well, every year more people don't fill them out. There's more doors you have to stop at. So if you can just get it through to your citizens to fill this out in the first place, there's less doors to stop on, instead of going, right now it's at like 60% people don't fill them out. That's 60% of the doors to step on. If you get it down to 80% fill it out and only 20% of the doors, you got a good chance of getting most of your populated counted. So it's more of an advertising thing that
And
you
they
can
said every
do
time you
well
go
by
to
your
a
county.
meeting next year, mention it, to your school superintendents, get education. Put it in
All
the
the groups we
papers,
go to, if we can keep telling people, put out the word, fill out
fill out the form,
fill out the
because
form,
we will
send it
get
in,
funding.
because that will be funding for your county. We'll find out more about online, to push online filling it out. And I got a 22-year-old son, if this comes in the mail, he's not gonna fill it out. If he did get it filled out, he's not gonna get it back in an envelope, and he's not gonna get it in the mail. But if he can go on his phone and fill it out and answer 10 questions, there's a better chance he'll get it done. So we're really pushing that.
And they're gonna give us literature that we can put in papers and that we can spread around to groups we talk to,
Well, Winona County, with their effort, went from a -3% to a +4%. They figured they made a 7% difference by helping and getting out the word and really pushing this. It's like, and they said they couldn't take the chance of showing 2 negatives in a row for investment opportunities for businesses and everything else in their county. We felt advertising, getting out the word is the big thing.
That's all, that was my main report.
Yeah, that's fine. Scott, anything else?
No, I'm good.
I had a SIMCAC meeting last week, and we're talking about changing some of the bylaws and looking at that. And that was pretty much the gist of the meeting. Other than that, the porta potty drop site deal, I'm going to talk about that only because I kind of brought that up and had that put on here. There are several people from the community that were concerned about not having some sort of bathroom facility at the drop sites, and rightfully so. Rick, I contacted both Tess and Rick. Rick had sent me a proposal. He had talked to like 3 or 4 different companies. He's got one back. He said he was going to maybe bring it to the board next week or whatever to kind of discuss it further. It would be a matter of the county purchasing portables and then having them serviced. But he also had some rollback containers he wanted to bring up, so he's going to try and bring them both up at the same time next week. But I just said I was going to bring the board up to speed on why this was on there, and I'm sure you guys seen some of the emails maybe that were floating around. But anyway, that's what it was, and he is working on it and has a quote from a couple companies for work. So
For the public, what they've had to do is there's usually 2 people at a drop site, and one would stay back and one would have to run to the closest facility to use a restroom. So people felt that it was time to actually
Yeah.
put something on site so you don't have to run.
Yeah, I didn't realize that till this other drop site issue came up, and it makes sense. I mean, gosh sakes. Yeah.
Because there's only 2 of them, and they can be pretty busy too,
Yeah.
you know, where you couldn't run it yourself.
Yeah, no, that
well, or if somebody's sick and you're by yourself, what do you do? You know, that's not a
no,
good working environment.
needs to get done.
Anyway, that's about it.
Well, we haven't met since the retreat, right?
Right.
So I would just mention that I think it was a very productive day.
I thought it was. Thought it went very well.
Yeah, and I would not be opposed to scheduling another one at some point here. As you can see, a normal meeting, as if you want to call today normal, can run lengthy, and this gave us an opportunity to thoroughly discuss some things that perhaps we wouldn't take the time to discuss that thoroughly at a regular meeting. Other thing is jail reuse. Went to the larger public meeting last week, and then followed that morning with another meeting with representatives from the group. I think they did a very good job of the study, given the some of the difficulty in getting exact information or measurements and so forth. But where we go from here, I'm not sure. I would just, as personally, indicate that the 3 quote-unquote finalists that came down all have a price tag that is higher than I would like to see. So
I think we got to discuss at some point just starting up kind of or keeping the reuse going, so people that have the interest to keep pushing this to show them the price tags that came out of this, and see where we could investigate from there. So
Yeah.
at least the community knows how far we are.
Well, and one of the proposals, or all 3, was for a full renovation. Scott brought it up, and I concurred that, at least for county use, like to look at what would 1 floor of renovation cost versus going all the way to the roof. And
there is
so
possibilities of future grants if you don't do it all right away.
Yeah, so
we don't. But
anyway, we need to keep moving on this and come to a resolution. So that's all I've got.
And then at some point, we just got to put the amounts that it would cost to do something with the amounts it would cost to not do it, and make a decision eventually. Yeah.
I was at an extension committee meeting the other night, and among the normal kinds of things we talk about there, we did bring up the situation of staffing there for the secretarial issue, and it seems to be working fine for the Extension Service. I haven't heard anything contrary to that from the vet service guys, so I assume it's working all right.
Commented that it's working okay, too.
Yeah. Okay. So that seems to be fine. It'll be kind of interesting the week that the extension staff isn't there. They're out at the fairgrounds, but they'll have to figure out how to match that up. But other than that, the Corps of Engineers. This is off the water planning meetings that I've been at lately. There've been a couple, 3 of them. The Corps of Engineers kind of did a number on us on this Crooked Creek watershed structure that was being planned for hopefully this summer, and the Corps of Engineers came in late. They'd been asked to come in the planning process, and they opted out of that. And now when it gets toward actually doing it, then they come in and say, well, we've got a problem with that, and we've got to resolve this problem, and so the Crooked Creek watershed structure probably isn't going to get done until 19 instead of in 18, which is kind of frustrating for the people involved. But I don't understand why the Corps of Engineers had to be that way. I've got a friend in management of the Corps of Engineers. I haven't been able to contact him yet. I will. But that's as far as we can go there. Now, closing public comment. Mr. Chapman's hand came up first.
Just 2 minutes, that's all it will take. My name is Ed Chapman.
I'll have to say this before you start, before Mike comes up. We have 2 board members that have a meeting that they have to be at 12. So if they have to leave, whenever they have to leave, they'll just have to go. We'll still have a quorum. But that's the best I can do for you. I'm sorry.
I understand. No, thanks. My name is Ed Chapman. I'm a hot air balloon pilot. I'm also a fixed-wing pilot. I've flown for 49 years, time in the Marine Corps and time in the airline industry. I've only known Mr. Pogzinski a little over 2 years. I approached him 2 months ago and asked him if he would be open to the idea of an ad hoc, voluntary, small group of pilots who would put together a couple things for his consideration. And he said, yes, that'd be just fine. I'd like to read just the first paragraph of a letter that was sent to him yesterday. Brian, the Airport Advisory Board met February 3rd, 2018 to consolidate individual notes taken after study of the draft airport layout plan of 2005 and the current capital improvement plan. The board is pleased to note that the County Board of Commissioners is considering the reestablishment of an airport commission. All 5 Airport Advisory Board members are willing to make themselves available for the 2 positions contemplated for pilots. MnDOT personnel indicate that in over 90% of the airport projects they are involved in, an airport commission exists for the airport being funded. And it goes on, but no need to bring that up here. You guys are doing a fine job. You're busy. I appreciate it. But this airport business, this is the only situation that I'm aware of where you can put in $1 and you get back $19 in the form of state and federal money. So look forward to working with you on down the road.
May I have your phone number at some point? I don't know who else to contact about the 2 members from that group. So you're here, so if you give me your phone number, I can follow up on that. Thank you. Okay. Mike Fields had his hand up before you did. Okay.
In conclusion, well, I'd like to apologize for my earlier irritation, but I'm seeing people bending the rules in order to hurry up and turn my backyard into an industrial zone. And then by the first part that I was able to say, I provided you with documentation and made it pretty clear that you were deliberately misled. about that whole cumulative effects thing when you approved the Skyline EAW. So you might want to take another look at that. But that whole thing raised several troubling questions. The Schutz Quarry and the Skyline Quarry both have the same legal status, which is no legal status. Yet the county was holding Schutz at bay while getting this whole Skyline thing rushed through. I mean, it is rushed through. I mean, if you look at the paperwork that's been, it's just full of mistakes. But anyway, you guys wait, you guys come through. So now when the Schutz Quarry comes up for a CUP, well, then, as you were told, then you would have to probably look at cumulative effects in that case. So my question was, is the county picking winners and losers here? I don't like that. And why? And just to conclude, well, I think it stinks. Don't you want to have faith in the facts you need to have that? Don't you want to have faith in the facts that you need to make fully informed decisions? Most people don't like being deliberately misled. Maybe you do, I don't know, but it doesn't make for good decision making. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Michael Kruko from Bonanza Grain Kruko Rock Products. In Mr. Locker's agenda request form, he stated that there was going to be no action required from this board. That's why he didn't give us any public hearing notice, any requirements with public hearing requirements. But he did ask for action. At the end, he asked for your support. The problem is, this was then a public hearing. Nobody received notice. You heard one side. We had no opportunity to rebut anything that he presented. And he also did not include numerous things that were in that letter I sent you on December 15, 2017. And so, again, we just want to state again that this was improper. And Mr. Locker, we offered him an opportunity to come down to our office to look at our records that we had. Refused to do it. Refused. No further comment.
Thank you. Any further public comment? That being the last thing on the agenda.
I would move to adjourn.
Second.
I wonder why those two moved that and seconded it so quickly. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you.